When a cruel HOA president shaved off a woman's beautiful hair just for fun, she thought she had all the power. But when the victim's husband came home and saw what happened, everything changed. He wasn't just any husband. He was a man who made entire cities tremble. And now, someone had dared to touch what he loved most. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. Maria Castellano stared at her scalp, raw and pale under the harsh bathroom light. Patches of stubble remained where Karen Whitmore's electric clippers had torn through her waist-length black hair just hours ago. The hair that her grandmother had braided every morning in Sicily. The hair that her husband had wrapped around his fingers on their wedding night, calling it silk spun from midnight itself. Gone. Her hands trembled as she touched the butchered remains. The tears had stopped an hour ago, leaving only a hollow ache in her chest that felt like drowning on dry land. She could still hear Karen's laughter echoing in her mind, could still smell the burning scent of her hair under those cruel blades. Your garden violates HOA Code 7.3, Karen had said that morning, standing at Maria's door with her clipboard and that pinched expression of superiority. The roses extend 4 inches past the property line. Maria had tried to explain. The roses were her mother's, sent as cuttings from the old country, the only living connection to a woman buried 3 years now in Palermo's ancient cemetery. She had promised her mother she would keep them alive, would tend them with the same love her mother had shown. I don't care about your sob story, Karen had snapped, her blonde hair perfectly coiffed, her white tennis outfit spotless. Rules are rules. Remove them by tomorrow or face a $5,000 fine. Maria had begged. She had offered to trim them herself, to build a small trellis to train them back. She had even offered to dig them up and replant them exactly on the line, though it would damage their roots. Karen's eyes had gleamed with something dark and hungry. You immigrants think you can come here and ignore our rules. You think your little cultural trinkets matter more than property values. The words had stung, but Maria had swallowed her pride. Her husband, Antonio, had taught her that pride was expensive in their new country. Keep your head down, work hard, build a life. Don't make waves. Please, Maria had whispered. I'll fix it today. Karen had smiled then, a smile that made Maria's blood run cold. You know what? I'm tired of your kind ruining our neighborhood. Those roses aren't your only violation. She had pointed at Maria's hair, hanging loose over her shoulders that morning because she had been tending the garden at dawn. HOA Code 12.8 states that all residents must maintain a professional appearance in common areas. Your excessive hair length violates community standards. Maria had blinked, confused. My hair. But I'm just in my garden. The front garden is a common area visible to the street. Karen had stepped closer, and Maria had smelled her expensive perfume mixed with something bitter, like old rage. You have 2 choices. Cut your hair to an acceptable length, or I'll do it for you. Consider it community service. Maria had laughed then, thinking it was a joke. No one could be that cruel over flowers and hair. No one could be that petty, that evil. But Karen hadn't been joking. She had called 2 other HOA board members, both middle-aged men who looked uncomfortable but stayed silent as Karen backed Maria against her own front door. She had pulled electric clippers from her oversized purse, the kind used at barber shops, and before Maria could even scream, Karen had grabbed a fistful of her hair and fired up the blades. The sound had been like a swarm of mechanical wasps. Maria had fought, had screamed, had begged. But Karen was stronger than she looked, fueled by years of petty tyranny and the power of her position. The 2 men had held Maria's arms while Karen sheared her like an animal, laughing as great hanks of black hair fell to the ground. This is what happens when you don't follow the rules, Karen had whispered in her ear, breath hot against Maria's neck. This is what happens when you think you're special. When it was done, Maria's hair lay scattered across her front walk like fallen feathers. Karen had taken photos with her phone, smiling as she snapped pictures of Maria's devastated face, her butchered scalp, the tears streaming down her cheeks. "Consider this your official warning," Karen had said, brushing hair off her white tennis skirt. "The roses better be gone by tomorrow. And if you try to report this, remember, I have witnesses who will say you became violent and we had to restrain you. You're just an immigrant with a temper. I'm a respected community leader. Who do you think they'll believe?" She had walked away, heels clicking on the concrete, leaving Maria collapsed on her doorstep surrounded by the ruins of her dignity. Now, hours later, Maria stared at herself in the bathroom mirror and didn't recognize the woman looking back. Her eyes looked dead, hollow. The light that Antonio loved, the spark he said reminded him of Mediterranean starlight, had been extinguished. She heard his car pull into the driveway at exactly 6 o'clock, as always. Antonio Castellano was a man of precision, of careful routines. He owned several restaurants in the city, legitimate businesses that employed dozens of people. He paid his taxes, donated to charity, attended church every Sunday. But Maria knew what the whispers said. She knew why men stepped aside when Antonio entered a room, why waiters trembled when serving him, why the police never questioned his business dealings too closely. She knew the truth that lurked beneath his gentle smile and soft hands. Her husband was not just a restaurateur. She heard his footsteps on the stairs, heard him calling her name with that slight Italian accent that had never quite faded despite 30 years in America. "Maria. Tesoro, I'm home. I brought your favorite." His voice cut off as he appeared in the bathroom doorway. The bag from the Italian bakery fell from his hands. Cannoli and sfogliatelle scattered across the tile floor, cream and chocolate streaking the white porcelain. "Maria." His voice was barely a whisper. "What happened to your hair?" She couldn't speak. She could only watch his face in the mirror as he took in the damage. Watched as his expression shifted from confusion to horror to something cold and terrible that she had never seen before. Who did this? His hands hovered over her head, afraid to touch, as if she might shatter. "Maria, amore mio, who did this to you?" The tears started again, hot and angry. Karen. Karen Whitmore. The HOA president. The words tumbled out in a rush, the whole horrible story, from the roses to the threats to the clippers and the laughter and the humiliation. Antonio listened in silence. He didn't interrupt. He didn't rage or shout. He simply stood behind her, his reflection in the mirror growing colder and harder with each word until his face looked carved from marble. When she finished, he gently turned her to face him. His hands cupped her ravaged head with infinite tenderness, and he kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "You are still the most beautiful woman in the world," he said softly. "Your hair will grow back. But Maria, my love, my heart, why didn't you call me? Why didn't you stop her? She said no one would believe me." Maria's voice broke. "She said I'm just an immigrant, and she's respected, and I would be the one punished if I fought back. She said wrong." Antonio's voice was gentle, but his eyes were frozen oceans. "She doesn't know who you are. She doesn't know who your husband is. She made a very serious mistake today." "Antonio, please," Maria grabbed his hands. "Don't do anything that will bring trouble. It's just hair. It will grow back. I don't want you to. Just hair." He pulled back, and for the first time in their marriage, she saw him truly angry. Not at her, never at her, but angry in a way that made the air in the bathroom feel thin. "She attacked you, humiliated you, violated you in your own home because of roses your mother gave you. Because of hair I have loved since the day I met you. She took photographs to mock you. She threatened you with her power." He straightened, and suddenly he wasn't her gentle husband anymore. He was someone else, something else. The man the whispers spoke of. "She touched what is mine," Antonio said quietly. "She hurt what I treasure most in this world. There are rules for such things, Maria. Very old rules. What are you going to do?" He kissed her forehead again. I'm going to have a conversation with Mrs. Whitmore. Just a conversation. I promise you, nothing illegal. Nothing that will bring police to our door. But she needs to understand that actions have consequences. That night, Maria couldn't sleep. She lay in bed while Antonio made phone calls in his study, his voice too low to hear but the tone sending shivers down her spine. She heard names she recognized from the restaurants, men who came to the back doors after closing, men who called Antonio Don. She had married him knowing what he was. Or rather, knowing the rumors of what he was. Antonio had never confirmed or denied them. He simply loved her, provided for her, treated her like a queen. Whatever darkness existed in his business life had never touched their marriage. Until now. The next morning, Antonio kissed her goodbye as usual. Stay home today, he told her. Rest. I've called a specialist to come look at your hair, see if anything can be done to help it grow back faster. And Maria? He paused at the door. Don't go to the front windows today. Trust me. She trusted him. But curiosity won over obedience. At 10 o'clock, she peeked through the curtains and saw 3 large moving trucks pull up to Karen Whitmore's house across the street. Men in professional uniforms began emptying the house with ruthless efficiency. Furniture, boxes, everything. Karen came running out in her bathrobe, screaming. What are you doing? You can't do this. I'll call the police. One of the movers, a thick-necked man with cold eyes, showed her a paper. Even from across the street, Maria could hear his words. Foreclosure, ma'am. Bank owns the property now. You need to vacate immediately. Foreclosure. That's impossible. Our mortgage is paid. We own this house outright. The mover shrugged. Not according to the bank's records. You have 1 hour to collect personal items, then we're changing the locks. Karen's husband appeared, looking confused and frightened. They argued with the movers, made frantic phone calls, but nothing changed. Within 2 hours, their entire house was emptied and they were standing on the curb with 3 suitcases and nowhere to go. Maria watched, her heart pounding. This was impossible. You couldn't just take someone's house, not like this, not legally. But then she saw Antonio's black Mercedes pull up down the street. He didn't get out. He just sat there, watching, until Karen looked up and saw him. Even from a distance, Maria could see the blood drain from Karen's face. Karen knew. Somehow, she knew exactly who Antonio was and what he had done. But it didn't end there. Over the next week, Maria watched as Karen's life systematically unraveled. Her husband's job at the investment firm ended abruptly due to irregularities in his accounts. Their bank accounts were frozen pending an IRS investigation. Their cars were repossessed. But Antonio wasn't finished. Maria discovered the true extent of his reach when she overheard a phone conversation. Make sure everyone knows, Antonio said quietly into his phone. Every business, every club, every organization in this city. The Whitmore name is poison now. No credit, no loans, no memberships, no mercy. Maria's hands trembled as she listened. She had asked for protection, but this felt like something else. This felt like annihilation. That evening, she confronted him. Antonio, this is too much. You're destroying her completely. He looked at her with those dark, unreadable eyes. Do you remember what she said to you, Maria? You immigrants think you can ignore our rules. She didn't just attack you. She attacked your heritage, your mother's memory, everything you are. She did it with pleasure. But we're better than this, Maria whispered. Antonio crossed the room and took her hands. I need you to understand something, Tesoro. In my world, there are rules. Old rules. When someone violates the sanctity of a man's home, when they harm his family, there must be consequences. Not because I want revenge, though I do, but because if I don't respond, I show weakness. And weakness in my position invites more attacks. So this is about you. Maria pulled away, hurt. No. His voice was firm. This is about you never having to be afraid again. This is about every person in this neighborhood, in this city, knowing that Maria Castellano is protected. Untouchable. Sacred. No one will ever dare harm you again, Maria. Not ever. That is worth any price. She saw the truth in his eyes then. This wasn't just revenge. It was a declaration, a message written in Karen's destroyed life that would echo through every corner of his world. Karen herself was removed from the HOA board after anonymous complaints about embezzlement and abuse of power led to an independent audit. The audit revealed thousands in misappropriated funds, though Maria suspected the evidence had been carefully manufactured. The country club revoked their membership. Their friends stopped returning calls. They were forced to move to a small apartment on the wrong side of town, the kind of place Karen had spent her life looking down upon. Maria watched it all unfold from her window, her heart breaking even as justice was served. She saw Karen crying on the curb as movers took away her furniture. She saw Karen's husband. Shoulders slumped in defeat, loading suitcases into a borrowed truck. She even saw Karen look across the street at Maria's house, her face a mask of terror and understanding. And through it all, Antonio never admitted to anything. He simply held Maria at night, stroking her growing hair, whispering words of love in Italian. But Maria knew there was more coming. She could feel it in the way Antonio watched the news, in the phone calls that still came late at night, in the grim satisfaction in his eyes when he heard that Karen had been forced to take a job as a cashier at a discount store. "Antonio," she said one night, 2 weeks after the incident. "Isn't this enough? You've destroyed her life. She's lost everything. Can't it be over now?" He looked at her with those dark eyes, eyes that had seen things she could only imagine. "Tesoro, you have a kind heart. It's one of the million reasons I love you. But Karen Whitmore didn't just cut your hair. She attacked your dignity. She tried to break your spirit. She thought she could do this because you were powerless, because you were different, because she had authority and you had nothing." He took her hands. "I have spent my entire life making sure that people understand respect. Making sure that the weak are protected, that the strong don't prey on the helpless. Karen Whitmore is a bully who has spent years tormenting people she saw as beneath her. Your roses were not her first cruelty. They were simply the cruelty that mattered to me. But what else is there?" Maria whispered. "You've taken her house, her money, her status. What more can you do?" Antonio smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I can make sure she understands exactly what she took from you. I can give her perspective." 3 days later, Maria received a letter. It was from Karen, handwritten on cheap notebook paper, the kind that costs $1 for 100 sheets. "Dear Mrs. Castellano. I am writing to apologize for my actions. I had no right to touch your hair or to threaten you about your roses. I was cruel and vindictive, and I took pleasure in hurting you. This was wrong. I have been asked to explain to you why I did what I did, and to be completely honest, even though the truth shames me. My entire life, I have been insecure. I grew up poor, in a trailer park, looked down upon by everyone. When I married Richard and we moved into Oak Hills Estates, I finally felt like I was somebody. I became HOA president because it gave me power over the people who once looked down on me. But that power corrupted me. I started to enjoy making others feel small. I would find violations, create rules, invent problems just so I could assert my authority. You weren't my first victim. Over the years, I drove 3 families out of the neighborhood with fines and harassment. I destroyed a teenager's business because his lawn mowing company was too successful. I reported an elderly man to code enforcement because his rosebushes, like yours, violated my rules. When I saw you that morning, so beautiful with your long hair and your old-world grace, I felt that old envy rise up in me. You had something I could never have, natural elegance, genuine kindness, a husband who clearly adored you. So I took something from you. I wanted to see you brought low. I wanted you to feel the humiliation I had felt my whole life. I know now that what I did was evil. Your husband has made sure I understand exactly how evil. He hasn't hurt me physically. He hasn't threatened me. But he has taken everything I valued and shown me how empty it all was. The house, the status, the power, none of it was real. It was all built on cruelty and fear. I am writing this letter because I was told that if I explain myself honestly, if I confess my sins, then perhaps I can begin to rebuild my life. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that I am sorry, truly sorry, for what I did to you. Your roses should have been treasured, not threatened. Your hair should have been admired, not destroyed. You should have been welcomed to the neighborhood, not terrorized. I hope someday your hair grows back and that you can look in the mirror without remembering what I did. I hope your roses still bloom. I will carry the shame of my actions for the rest of my life. Karen Whitmore. Maria read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. Not tears of anger anymore, but something more complex. Pity, perhaps. Understanding. Even a strange kind of satisfaction. Did you make her write this? She asked Antonio when he came home. I suggested it might be helpful for her, he said carefully. I told her that you were a forgiving woman, that if she showed genuine remorse, you might be willing to let bygones be bygones. And if she didn't write it? Antonio's silence was answer enough. What happens to her now? Maria asked. That depends on you, amore. If you want, I can make sure she never bothers anyone again. She'll disappear from this city, start over somewhere far away where her reputation won't follow her. Or. He paused. Or you can choose mercy. I can arrange for her to get her job back, to find a modest apartment, to live a quiet life. Not her old life, never that, but a livable one. She'll never have power again, but she'll have existence. Maria looked at the letter again. She thought about her mother, who had always taught her that revenge was a poison you drank yourself. She thought about the roses, still blooming in her garden, stronger than ever after she had carefully tended them back to health. She thought about her hair, growing back in thick and dark, already reaching her shoulders. Give her the quiet life, Maria said finally. But with conditions. She has to volunteer at an immigrant services center twice a week. She has to see the faces of the people she once looked down upon. She has to help them, serve them, learn from them. Antonio smiled, and this time it reached his eyes. You are a better person than I deserve. No, Maria said, taking his hand. I'm a person who remembers what it's like to be powerless. I don't want to become what she was. He pulled her close, kissing the top of her growing hair. This is why I love you. You have the strength to be kind. 6 months later, Maria stood in her garden, pruning her mother's roses. They had grown wild and beautiful, spilling over the trellis Antonio had built, filling the air with their perfume. Her hair hung past her shoulders again, not quite as long as before, but getting there. The neighborhood had changed too. A new HOA president, a kind retired teacher named Mr. Chen, had abolished most of Karen's cruel rules. The teenagers could run their businesses again. The elderly couple down the street planted a vegetable garden without fear. Immigrant families moved in and planted their own roses, their own pieces of home. Maria had become something of a legend in Oak Hills Estates. People whispered her story, though the details changed with each telling. Some said her husband was connected to powerful people. Others said he was a secret millionaire who had bought Karen's debt. A few knew the truth but would never speak it aloud. But everyone agreed on one thing: Maria Castellano was not to be crossed. Not because she was cruel, but because she was protected by something fierce and absolute. She heard footsteps on the sidewalk and looked up. Karen Whitmore stood at the edge of her property, looking thinner and older, her blonde hair gone gray, her expensive clothes replaced with discount store basics. She held a small package wrapped in brown paper. "Mrs. Castellano," she said quietly. "I hope I'm not intruding." Maria set down her pruning shears. "What can I do for you, Mrs. Whitmore?" "I wanted to bring you something." Karen extended the package with shaking hands. "I've been volunteering at the immigrant center, like you required. I've been learning about the people I once." She swallowed hard. "I've been learning. One of the women there, Fatima, she's from Syria. She told me about her garden back home, about the roses her grandmother grew." Maria unwrapped the package. Inside was a small potted rosebush, barely more than a cutting, with one perfect red bloom. "It's a Damascus rose," Karen continued. "Fatima helped me order it from a specialty nursery. It's supposed to be one of the oldest varieties in the world. I thought maybe you'd like to add it to your garden. To remember your mother and also to remember that." She trailed off, tears in her eyes. "To remember that things can grow back. Even after they've been cut down." Maria looked at the rose, then at Karen. The woman looked broken, humbled, but there was something genuine in her eyes now. Something human. "Thank you," Maria said quietly. "I'll plant it beside my mother's roses. They'll grow together." Karen nodded, unable to speak. She turned to leave, then stopped. "Your hair," she whispered. "It's beautiful. I'm so sorry It's growing back," Maria interrupted gently. "Everything grows back, Mrs. Whitmore. If we give it time and care." Karen looked at her for a long moment, tears streaming down her face. "I don't understand you. After everything I did, after what your husband did to me in return, you're still kind. Why?" Maria set down the potted rose and stepped closer. "Because I remember who I was before you cut my hair. I was happy, at peace, full of love. When you took my hair, I felt like you took part of my soul. I was angry, broken, empty." She touched her growing hair. "But then I realized something. If I let that anger consume me, if I let your cruelty turn me cruel, then you would have truly won. You would have destroyed who I was. So I chose to remain myself. Not for you, Karen. For me." Karen wiped her eyes. "I spent my whole life thinking power was everything. That if I could control others, if I could make them fear me, I would finally feel secure. But your husband showed me real power. The kind that doesn't need to announce itself. The kind that protects instead of oppresses. He loves me," Maria said simply. "That's his power. Love makes us fierce." "I never had that," Karen admitted. "Richard married me for my father's business connections. I married him to escape poverty. We've never really loved each other. Not like you and your husband." Maria felt a wave of compassion. "It's not too late, Karen. Love can grow anywhere, even in concrete. You just have to stop building walls and start planting seeds." After Karen left, Maria carried the Damascus rose to her garden. Antonio appeared beside her, materializing as he often did, silent and watchful. "You gave her the rose," he observed. "She earned it," Maria said. "She's changing. Maybe not enough, maybe not fast enough, but she's trying. And if she's not? If this is just an act?" Maria smiled, pressing her hand against his chest. "Then I have faith that my husband will know what to do. But I think she's genuine. I think she looked into the abyss you showed her and realized what she had become." Antonio wrapped his arms around her, resting his chin on her head. "You have more faith in people than I do. That's why we work," Maria said. "You protect me from the world's cruelty. I protect you from becoming cruel yourself. They stood together in the garden, surrounded by roses that had survived everything thrown at them. Above, the sun broke through the clouds, warming their faces. Maria's hair caught the light, shining like black silk, growing longer every day. And in the soil at their feet, a Damascus rose began to root, ready to bloom in a new land, far from home but finally safe. Maria sat in her garden, now famous throughout the neighborhood for its beauty. The Damascus rose had grown into a massive bush, intertwining with her mother's roses to create a wall of red and pink blooms that people walked blocks to see. Her hair hung past her waist again, streaked now with distinguished silver at the temples. She wore it in a long braid, the way her grandmother had taught her, the way her daughter now learned to do. Yes, a daughter. Little Sophia, born 4 years ago, with Antonio's dark eyes and Maria's olive skin and a temperament that promised she would take no nonsense from anyone. Sophia played in the grass now, making flower crowns from rose petals, her laughter like music. The doorbell rang. Maria found Karen Whitmore on her doorstep, looking healthier than she had in years. She had a steady job now managing the Immigrant Services Center, had remarried a kind man who worked as a teacher, had found peace in service rather than power. I came to say goodbye, Karen said. Richard and I are moving. He got a teaching position in Oregon, and I've been offered a job running a refugee resettlement program there. That's wonderful, Maria said, and meant it. I wanted to thank you, Karen continued. For giving me a chance to become someone better. For not destroying me when you could have. Your husband, he could have ended me. We both know that. But you chose mercy. Maria smiled. We all deserve a chance to grow back, Karen. Like roses after a hard pruning. Karen laughed, a real laugh, free and genuine. I'll never forget what I did to you. But I'm grateful you gave me the chance to do better. After Karen left, Antonio appeared in the doorway, Sophia perched on his shoulders, squealing with delight. She's really changing, he observed. Your mercy was not misplaced. Neither was your protection, Maria replied, taking his hand. You showed her the consequences of cruelty. I showed her the rewards of change. Together, we taught her something she never learned before. And what is that, amore? Maria looked at her roses, at her daughter, at her husband, at the life they had built from silk threads and iron will. That dignity cannot be taken, she said softly. Only given away. And that love, real love, protects what it treasures without becoming the thing it fights against. Antonio kissed her forehead, right at the hairline where her beautiful black hair began. You are my conscience, he whispered. And you are my armor, she replied. Sophia giggled above them, pulling rose petals from her father's hair, scattering them like blessings over her parents' heads. In the garden, the roses bloomed eternal, survivors of every storm, beautiful precisely because they had been tested and had endured. Just like the silk thread of Maria's hair, stronger now where it had been broken. Just like vengeance, transformed by mercy into something that healed rather than destroyed. Just like love, which protects fiercely but never loses its tenderness. The story ends where it began, in a garden, with roses, with hair like midnight silk, and with the understanding that the strongest people are not those who wield power, but those who choose when to show mercy. Karen Whitmore learned this lesson the hard way. She never forgot it. And she spent the rest of her life trying to deserve the grace she had been given. That evening, as the sun set over the garden, Maria stood at her bedroom window braiding her hair for the night. Antonio came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. Do you have any regrets? He asked softly. About how I handled Karen. About what I took from her. Maria was quiet for a moment, watching the roses sway in the evening breeze. I regret that it had to happen at all. I regret that cruelty exists in the world. But no, I don't regret that you protected me. You showed her that actions have consequences, and I showed her that people can change. Together, we gave her something she never had before. What's that? A chance to find her humanity. Maria turned in his arms. You know what the strange thing is? I think about that day sometimes, when she cut my hair. I think about how powerless I felt, how small. And I realize now that she felt that way her entire life. She was trying to make others feel her pain. Antonio's jaw tightened. That doesn't excuse what she did. No, Maria agreed. But it explains it. And understanding doesn't mean forgiving immediately. It means choosing not to become what hurt us. She touched his face gently. You are a dangerous man, Antonio Castellano. You have power that most people can't imagine. But the most powerful thing you've ever done wasn't destroying Karen's life. It was listening when I asked you to spare her. It was trusting my judgment about Mercy. You make me better, he whispered. And you keep me safe, she replied. That's marriage. That's love. We balance each other. Downstairs, Sophia called for them, wanting her bedtime story. They went down together, Antonio carrying their daughter while Maria followed, her long braids swaying behind her like a banner of survival. As Maria tucked Sophia into bed, the little girl looked up at her mother's hair with wonder. Mama, your hair is so long and pretty. I want mine to grow just like yours. Maria smiled, stroking her daughter's dark curls. It will, my love. Hair grows, flowers bloom, and people change. That's the magic of time and patience. Did your mama have long hair too? Yes, Maria said, her voice thick with emotion. Just like this. And her mama before her. It's our family's tradition. Our strength. Will you teach me to braid it? Every day, Maria promised. And I'll tell you stories about your grandmother, about the old country, about roses that traveled across the ocean to bloom in new soil. Antonio stood in the doorway, watching his wife and daughter, and felt something shift in his chest. He had built an empire on fear and respect, had made men tremble with a word, had destroyed lives with a phone call. But this simple moment of love and legacy, was worth more than all of it. This was what he protected. This was why he did what he did. And he would burn the world down before he let anyone harm it again.